Thank you for tuning in. Prime Minister-designate Saad Hariri just concluded his final day of unbinding consultations with lawmakers to form a new cabinet. It has been an eventful week, with Hariri's key support leading to the election of Free Patriotic Movement founder, former General Michel Aoun, as Lebanon's 13th president last Monday. It ended around 2.5 years of presidential and political vacuum. And we welcome today future MP Bassem Shabb to discuss more. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Now, all eyes are on the formation of this new government. And I want to know, what can we expect and how fast can we expect it?
I think we can expect a fast formation of the government, and all hopes that we would have something before Independence Day on November the 22nd. And I must say that all parties concerned showed flexibility. They showed understanding that we all Lebanese are passing through a very difficult time, and they do feel the need for an urgent formation of a unity government.
You say that even though when they were in Parliament trying to get his name across, Hariri, Hezbollahs MPs actually abstained from ever naming him, even though Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah had actually shown and said that he did not mind Hariri becoming prime minister. So you don't think that can actually impact how fast, or maybe what ministries they're going to maybe argue on? Or
I think the real position of Hezbollah was outlined by Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah about 2.5 or 3 months ago, when he said that he would go along with Prime Minister Saad Hariri becoming prime minister. I think that was the important endorsement. Everybody did not expect Hezbollah members of parliament to name Prime Minister Saad Hariri. That was understandable. But they did not name somebody else.
Right.
Which means it was a form of a tacit approval, if you wish.
So if we don't say anything, we're not objecting, but we're not necessarily endorsing, basically.
What's more important, the statement that our colleague Mr. Raad gave as they came out from the consultations. He gave a very positive statement, saying they will go along, they will do everything they can to expedite the formation of a unity government. And his position was very much the position of other major parliamentary blocs.
What can we expect from this new government? I mean, it has been over 2.5 years of a presidential vacuum. Lebanon has been through, it is still going through a hard economic time. Real estate is up. Let's not even talk about foreign investment. And generally, there's been, you know, with the Syrian crisis nearby, there's been a lot of negativity surrounding the country, whether it's in the media, locally. So can we expect this to be, people keep talking about this new era. Do you think it's going to be a new era, or just?
It is indeed a new era for many reasons. Lebanon has passed through very difficult points, very difficult periods. One was the possibility of a sectarian conflict. And we bypassed that, luckily, and mainly because of the dialogue between the Future Movement and Hezbollah. And so that was the most immediate threat. And then the other threat was a terrorist threat, either internal acts of violence or an incursion across the border. The Lebanese borders are practically sealed, and the intelligence agencies are cooperating with each other. So the security situation is mostly under control. The most immediate problem from the vacancy of the presidency has become economic. And all the indicators showed that if we continued at the same pace, Lebanon would fail economically. And I think the move by the governor of the central bank, Mr. Riyad Salemi, showed that we were practically at the end of the line. And I think everybody realized something needs to be done. And the move that Prime Minister Saad Hariri took in endorsing General Aoun was a very bold and courageous move. And it proved to be the right move because the mood in the street quickly supported.
Well, did it prove to be the right move, or we don't know yet? So I want to basically quote somebody on what you just said, the Hariri's move. Rami Khouri, who is the founding director and now senior policy fellow of the Issam Faris Institute for Public Policy and International Affairs, recently wrote, and I quote, "The simple answer to why Hariri caved in and backed Aoun's presidency would appear to be that Hariri saw which way the wind was blowing in Lebanon, for in all three critical categories of domestic power, his star was declining." Do you agree?
I don't agree with that statement, honestly. I think that...
so you don't agree that his star is declining in some way?
No, clearly.
So it wasn't a last resort to back on when he had so vehemently for so many years stated...
No, I don't think so. And I think the mood from the other side, if you wish, from Hezbollah was a very positive mood because the Iranians feel, like the Americans and like the Saudis, that a stable Lebanon is something that is good for all parties concerned. For Hezbollah, a stable Lebanon is a requirement for them to continue their presence in Syria. For the Saudis, a stable Lebanon is an area where there is Sunni-Shia dialogue and possibly Saudi-Iranian understanding.
But how do you see Hezbollah?
I don't think it was, I think...
but Hezbollah didn't really, this is what Hezbollah's always wanted.
Yes, but Hezbollah for a while refused Prime Minister Saad Hariri to be nominated as Prime Minister.
If there was no Aoun, but they had never said that.
No, there was a lot of negative feeling towards Prime Minister Saad Hariri when the Yemeni war was at its peak. So everybody caved in. Everybody caved in. But most importantly, I think that the American presidential elections had a role to play. That people felt that with a new president in the White House, the rules of the game would change. And so everybody tried to block in and secure their local winnings before there was a new president in the White House. How is that?
I'll get back to that in a second, but just really quickly, how do you see the American elections, which, by the way, they're going to elect a new president in exactly 48 hours. How does it affect Lebanon in any way?
Well, Lebanon is an Iranian-American fault line. And I must say that we are seeing some stability in Lebanon as an aftermath of the nuclear accord between Iran and America and the West on the other hand. Lebanon, after the nuclear accords, was no longer a fault line between Iran and the West. And that really was a positive factor locally, in that the tensions between the different factions who have regional alignments have decreased. But the new president in the White House, whether it would be Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, have had a certain position towards Iran that is more radical and more antagonistic than the Obama administration.
You know,
and with a new administration, they may not accept a president in Lebanon who is a friend of the Iranians.
We keep talking about Iran, and there's a reason we keep talking about Iran, more so than Saudi Arabia today. And I want to go back to maybe the term is what is a little bit upsetting, that Hariri's star is declining. But after the municipal elections...
But I disagreed with that.
I know you disagreed with that, I know. But it's because if you hear it and you're part of the future movement, you also don't want to agree or feel that it's true. But resigned Justice Minister Ashraf Rifi last May in the elections. He used to once be a part of Hariri's movement. Well, he launched a major challenge to Hariri's community in Tripoli when he ran a rival list and won significantly a large portion of what used to be Hariri supporters. So is his influence, if we don't want to say his star power, is his influence declining, and could Ashraf Rifi be the next big Sunni power?
I'm not in agreement with that analysis. As you well know, that local elections are different from parliamentary elections. And for example, if we take the Shia community. There was a lot of competition in the local elections between Amal, Hezbollah, and even the leftist parties, which scored well in many areas. But when it comes to a national election, the mood changes. So to translate from municipality elections to general elections is a leap of faith. I don't subscribe to that. I don't subscribe to that.
Okay, but you
don't.
But
the reaction after the nomination of Prime Minister Hariri shows that his line of thinking and his rapprochement with General Aoun that led to the election of President Aoun and nomination of Prime Minister Saad Hariri was well received in the Sunni street.
Right, but
so it was obvious.
It was and it wasn't, because in a lot of ways, let's be honest, in a lot of ways, a lot of people at first, also from the Future movement, condemned this. I mean, we're talking about Aoun being the closest ally to Hezbollah, 4 members of Hezbollah currently being indicted through the Special Tribunal for Lebanon for Saad Hariri's father's assassination. I mean, there's some sort of conflict of interest there, to say the least, somewhat. But I think there was probably, as you said, they arrived to a point where they were like, okay, so now what? Because this is the critical line. It's been 2.5 years. Where do we go from here? Is that what you're saying? And both sides caved in, as you are saying.
I mean, the decision, there were 2 important. One is to dissociate the tribunal from the sectarian tensions in Lebanon. The decision to proceed with dialogue with Hezbollah was a very important decision in Lebanon, not facing the same bloody conflict as Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. This was a very positive move. And it was, and if you want to call it realpolitik, it is realpolitik, but it effectively saved the country, and it's the only viable Sunni Shia dialogue in the Levant.
It still remains to be seen. Do you think, so you're optimistic and positive about the next months forward?
Yes.
Do you know, the national stance has always been that Lebanon should distance itself from regional wars and regional crises. And even the president, Michel Aoun, today said that it's very important that Lebanon remains not neutral, but just distant from everything that's surrounding it. However, Hezbollah, again, an ally of Aoun, has made it very clear and has been very open about its interference and intervention in Syria. So what message does it send to the U.S., to the West, now that Aoun is president?
Well, it is obvious that a lot of the media outlets in the West portrayed this as an Iranian victory of sorts.
Right.
But these are.
Do you agree with that?
I don't agree with that. I don't agree.
How do you disagree with that?
I think for General Aoun becoming president is to me as important as Prime Minister Saad Hariri being the Prime Minister designate. One cannot see one without the other. A year ago, and I know this from talking to people with members of parliament and others, that they were opposed to having Prime Minister Saad Hariri be in the Prime Minister position. And we've seen the vicious attacks on Saudi Arabia and on the Future movement from Hezbollah.
It's a known fact now that because also Hariri has been going through some tough times, there has been questions about whether or not Saudi Arabia, especially now that it's involved in Yemen, there have been questions about whether or not Lebanon still remains of interest to Saudi Arabia the way it used to. Do you think it still does?
I think it does. I think everybody has an interest in keeping Lebanon stable and economically viable. There's no question about that.
So economically, it's about to rise up again, shoot up?
Yes, I think everybody, there's no question that the impetus and the speed behind which events are taking place, a lot of that is economic. A lot of that is economic. And Saudi Arabia knows that Lebanon, in any future dialogue with the Iranians, a common understanding in Lebanon is a very good beginning to build on. There's no other place in the Middle East in which Iran and Saudi Arabia have some sort of dialogue or understanding as in Lebanon. So I think Lebanon plays a key role not only for Iran and Hezbollah, but it also plays a key role for Saudi Arabia as a sort of a liaison for a future
right. I mean,
rapprochement with Iran.
it sounds self-explanatory and quite rational when we put it in those terms, except that when we think about them as regional powers, they're completely opposed to each other. They're rivals, if you will, which is why it has been so difficult to reach a stage where you can have somebody like On, backed by Iran, become president, and somebody like Mr. Saad Hariri, backed by Saudi Arabia, become prime minister. I mean, this was unthinkable, you would think, 6 months ago.
Yeah, but the Middle East is full of these paradox situations. I mean,
we're competing with the United States in terms of most entertaining politics.
Look at Iran, Israel, and Russia and Syria. I mean, look at the United States, Russia, Iran, and Iraq. So for opposites to interact and coexist and cohabitate is not an unusual thing.
No, it's definitely not unusual. No, that's not what I was saying. But it happens so often here as well, in Lebanon specifically.
And also, to be fair, it negates the large Lebanese dimension of the parties concerned.
Okay.
It's really counterproductive to be reductionist to the extent of making Saad al-Hariri a Saudi agent and
no, not agent, but backed by generally the future movement being backed by Saudi.
Yes, but Hezbollah for a while was portraying the prime minister as such, and they have caved in. So I think to talk about caving in on the side of the future movement would be a little.
You don't like that term.
I don't like that term because everybody had to make compromises. But I'd like to emphasize that the players have a large Lebanese dimension to them. And to look at their regional affiliations without looking at their substantial Lebanese broad base would not be fair.
Thank you so much.